Chapter 28. Nova Part 2. Continue with Thomas's flashback. Thomas startled awake and was breathing hardly. He took deep breaths to calm himself down, hands clutching the bedsheet tightly until his knuckles turned white. It was just a dream. Thomas sighed when he succeeded in calming himself. Then he took a closer look around the room. This wasn't his room. Then the door opened and Thomas jumped out of bed. Well, he tried to. As soon as his feet touched the floor, he collapsed. He heard a female voice cursed and a pair of warm hands grabbed onto his left bicep. Thomas flinched away and growled at the intruder. Thomas willed his canines and claws out, but nothing happened.
The fuck?
Thomas cursed as he looked at his fingers, brows furrowed in confusion. Thomas? Thomas snapped his head up at the intruder. Now, having a closer look, the intruder was quite pretty. She had silky black hair and hazel eyes. She wore a white sundress that clashed with her tan skin in a good way. From her looks, she's probably about 18. The most distinguished about her, though, was the tattoo running across her exposed collarbone.
What's going on?
Thomas mumbled as he looked down at his hand, which he flexing again and again, but no claws. Thomas, I need you to calm down, the intruder said, but Thomas shut her out. Thomas growled at her.
What did you do to me?
He was about to pounce on her, but her tattoo glowed yellow and Thomas was knocked out cold. When Thomas came back again, he was back on the bed. He groaned and tried to rub his throbbing forehead, but he couldn't. He looked down and saw that he was chained to the bed. Thomas struggled and the clinking of chains attracted his captors. A tall male who looked about 19 years old walked in, his brow pinched in a deep frown. His dark brown eyes took in Thomas and rolled them.
Stop struggling with that small body of yours, kid. We aren't going to do anything to you.
Thomas glared.
Then why am I chained? Because you tried to attack Irene just now when she came to check on you.
Thomas stopped struggling with a frustrated huff.
What did you guys do to me? We didn't do anything to you. We helped you, actually. You were surrounded by these guys wearing lab coats. You were unconscious, so we swooped in and saved your ass.
Then everything came back to Thomas.
So, it was all real?
He whispered brokenly.
My wolf, he's actually gone?
The male's eyes softened and his frown disappeared. He walked towards the bed and sat at the edge.
What do I do? How can I go back to my pack?
Thomas's eyes started tearing up.
What will Dad say? I'll be the only werewolf who doesn't have a wolf.
Thomas chuckled bitterly.
How pathetic. Look, kid, I'm not a werewolf, so I won't know what you're going through right now, but losing your wolf, it wasn't your fault. You couldn't prevent that. There was 3 full-grown adults, all of them bigger and stronger than you. I could have prevented it.
Thomas yelled as he sobbed.
If I didn't follow that stupid dare, my wolf would still be alive and I won't be here, chained to the freaking bed in a house full of strangers.
The male looked at Thomas with sympathy.
You would have, but there's no use blaming yourself now. What done was done. You can't change the past even if you want to.
Thomas didn't reply and continued to sob.
I'm going to release you from these chains, okay?
The male said and pulled out a key.
Don't try to escape. At least not until we explain everything to you.
The male waited until Thomas nodded before unlocking the locks that was locking the chains together with the bed. When all of the chains was removed, the male sat back down on the edge of the bed, but Thomas didn't move. He was just staring at the ceiling blankly. The door opened again, revealing a woman with mocha skin and platinum hair. How is he, Ashton? The male, now identified as Ashton, walked over to her while shaking his head.
It had been 10 minutes after I unchained him. Hasn't moved an inch.
Ashton whispered. I'll take over, Ashton. You go rest. The woman started walking towards the bed after she patted Ashton on the shoulder.
Shavina, he could be still unstable. What if he attacks you?
Ashton protested. A child cannot hurt me. Nothing major, anyways. The woman, Shavina, smiled. Ashton sighed.
Fine. I'll be in my room if you need me.
Shavina did a shooing motion with her hands, and Ashton chuckled before leaving, closing the door behind him. Shavina turned to the boy on the bed and sighed. She walked over and took Ashton's seat. Thomas? No response. Thomas, come on, look at me. Shavina reached out and placed her hands on top of him. The tattoo on the side of her face glowed silvery white, and Thomas blinked. Thomas looked at Shavina.
What did you do?
Shavina smiled. She let go of his hand, and her tattoo turned back to their usual color, black. I used my blessing on you. Thomas's brow furrowed.
What blessing is that? My sad emotion. They just disappeared.
They didn't disappear, they were just dampened. Thomas looked at her slowly before turning away.
Showing something cool wouldn't make me forget what had happened to me.
Ah, but what if I say you have an ability like this? Thomas looked at her sharply. Shavina smiled. Come with me. Thomas was led to a living room, and Shavina motioned him to sit on one of the couches. Thomas did as she said and sat on the nearest couch. From the kitchen, the lady from before, Irene was it, walked out. She took one look at them before walking back to the kitchen. Thomas frowned.
Is she mad that I tried to attack her earlier?
Shavina smiled. I don't think so. Later, Irene walked out with a tray with 2 cups of tea and a plate of biscuits. Thank you, Irene. Shavina thanked with a smile. Irene smiled before walking away.
Wait,
Thomas called out. Irene stopped and turned around.
I'm sorry for before, for trying to attack you.
Thomas apologized sheepishly. Irene looked at him for a while before smiling. It's okay. No harm done. Shavina smiled before she called out, Thomas? Thomas turned his attention back to Shavina. What do you know about hunters? Thomas's brow furrowed as he thought about it.
Not much. Just that they hunt supernatural.
Shavina chuckled. That is true, but a hunter is like the police of the supernatural. They hunt the bad supernatural that cause damage to others. Thomas hummed.
Didn't thought it that way. But how is your blessing related to this?
Shavina smiled and pushed her hair away from her face. That blessing is called the blessing of the hunt. These tattoos, she waved at hers, are the markings of the blessing. Thomas remembered that Irene have those too on her collarbone.
Blessing of the hunt?
Shavina nodded. Whenever you agree to be a hunter, you'll receive these. Each guild have their very own marking. Ours are a swirl that branches out. Thomas backpedaled.
Wait, what?
Shavina smiled. I'm a hunter, Thomas. Irene and Ashton too. Thomas sat up straighter and gulped. When he was younger, he heard that hunters are powerful people and could kill you with the blink of an eye. Even though they're human, they were able to take down even the most ferocious rogue. Shavina laughed. No need to be so tense, Thomas. Relax. I'm not going to kill you. Thomas slouched with a sigh.
But how is this related to me, though? I'm not a hunter, so I wouldn't have the blessing of the hunt.
Shavina sighed. How much do you remember from the attack? Thomas sighed.
Not much. I passed out after they managed to kill my wolf.
Shavina nodded. Well, let me tell you what happened after that, then. We found you about an hour later. We were tracking down a rogue when Ashton saw you in the middle of a field, unconscious. We tried waking you up, but we couldn't. Ashton even slapped you, but you didn't do as much as twitch. Your breathing was shallow and quick. You were dying, Thomas. Thomas looked shocked at the revelation. After your wolf died, your human part of the soul couldn't handle it, and it was slowly dying. Irene tried healing you, but the soul is way out of her blessing. So we did what we have to make sure you live. I made you a hunter. Thomas looked at his hands.
But how is that possible? I thought only humans could be hunters.
The hunt works in many ways. There were history of other supernatural creatures being a hunter. Your soul accepts the transition and you started breathing more deeply. We don't know where your house was, so we brought you back to ours. Thomas nodded.
But how does this making you a hunter thing work? Sharing blood?
Thomas looked scandalized and Shavina laughed. Not like that, more like doing a blood oath. The guild leader and the person will have to be bleeding. Even a nick on the finger will do. And they merge their blood together. While doing that, the guild leader will have you swear the oath. When the process is done, you'll receive the blessing and the markings. Thomas pondered for a second.
But I didn't swear the oath. How can I have the powers?
Shavina shook her head. The blessing works in many ways. The one I told you is the general way. Some are born with it, some inherit it. Yours is because you were dying, but the transition is only half done. You may have the power, but you don't have the marking of the guild. This doesn't make you a hunter, only a werewolf that received the blessing of the hunt. Thomas scoffed.
I'm no werewolf. Right now, I'm just a human.
Shavina stood and walked towards Thomas. She sat beside him and squeezed his shoulder. Losing your wolf does not mean that you're not a werewolf anymore. If you're born this way, you'll always be this way. Being a hunter is just a title. At the end of the day, I'm still human. Shavina smiled. I understand if you're afraid to go back, but your pack will still accept you no matter what. Once a pack, always a pack. But if you want to stay, we will always welcome you. Thomas looked at Shavina curiously.
You won't force me to stay?
Shavina shook her head with a smile.
But you gave me the blessing of the hunt. Am I not obliged to stay?
Shavina picked up her cold tea and drank from it. You cannot just give the blessing of the hunt to others. The hunt chooses its champion. If you're worthy, you'll receive all the abilities the blessing gives you. But if you're not, even after the oath and all, you won't receive the blessing, nor the mark. If the blessing is given out freely, then the hunt would be corrupted and the hunters will become murderers. Thomas nodded.
So I'm allowed to leave?
Any time. Thomas thought about it before he stood up.
I want to go back home.
Shavina smiled like she expected him to say this. All right then. Mark? They heard footsteps before an Asian man with amber eyes and dark brown hair walked down the stairs and towards them, all the while complaining.
This better be good, Shav. I was having my beauty sleep.
Shavina laughed. If you'll kindly bring Thomas back home, that would be nice. Mark sighed but saluted.
Alrighty.
Then he turned to Thomas.
Come on, kiddo.
Mark said and reached out his hand. Thomas went to grab it, but then he turned back to Shavina.
I didn't tell you my name. How do you know?
Shavina gave him a secretive smile. There were lots of things you don't know about the hunt. Then she tossed something to him. Thomas caught it easily with his hand and he examined it. It was a pendant with a bow and arrow. That's a summoner. Use that to call us if you want to join, and we'll be there to get you. Just remember, we're called the Nova. Thomas looked at it, then pocketed it.
Thank you.
Shavina smiled. Have a safe trip, Thomas.
Hold on to my hand.
Thomas did as he was told and wait for more instructions. The tattoo around Mark's neck glowed red, and suddenly they were in the forest.
What the?
Mark released his hands and smirked.
I brought you just outside of your pack's territory. Don't want them to question me stuff.
He smiled and patted Thomas on the shoulder.
Stay safe, Thomas.
With that, he was gone. Thomas looked at his surrounding before he took a deep breath. After that, he started hiking. When he reached his house, he spotted Randolph, and soon Randolph was zooming towards him.
Where have you been?
Thomas quickly thought of a lie.
I fell asleep in the woods.
Randolph sighed.
You're lucky I have an excuse when Mr. Michaels barged into your room when I was about to leave and questioned your presence.
Thomas gave him a light-hearted smile.
Thank you. Anytime. Just don't do that anymore. You had me worried.
Thomas laughed.
No promises.
For the past few weeks had been hell. Thomas can't do anything a werewolf should do. He couldn't shift, he doesn't have his keen sense of smell, sight, and hearing anymore. So people keep scaring him as he did not hear them coming, flinching every time someone just touched his shoulder. He knew that Randolph knows something wrong with him. He kept eyeing Thomas weirdly, so whenever he came close, Thomas started making excuses and ran away. Don't want his secret to be revealed. But one night, he was in his room, fiddling with the pendant, when his room's door opened. He quickly hid the pendant under the blankets and stood up.
You need anything, Dad?
Thomas asked when his dad walked in.
Nothing. Just want to talk to you for a second.
Thomas felt his blood ran cold as he gulped. They walked to Thomas's bed and sat down.
So, Randolph told me you've been acting weird lately.
Thomas tried to keep his breathing steady.
What do you mean? That you've been more jumpy lately. What's wrong? You know you can talk to me about it.
Thomas smiled.
It's nothing. Just having bad dreams lately. So a bit paranoid.
His dad looked at him grimly.
Is it about your mom?
Last year, Thomas's mom had been killed when a rogue managed to escape the wolf patrolling's notice and got into the pack territory. His mom had been the one that went to kill it, but paid the price with her life. Thomas shook his head.
No, it's not. It's just too much thinking inside my head.
His dad sighed.
Well, don't think so much. If something's bothering you, then just go for it. Don't think too much.
Thomas smiled at his dad and nodded. His dad smiled and ruffled his hair.
Good night, son. You too, Dad.
When his father left, he started packing. He had made up his mind. Thomas sneaked out of his window and into the woods. He crossed the pack's territory and took out the pendant.
Now, how do I use this?
Thomas murmured as he looked at the pendant. Then he remembered Shavina's last words.
I hope this works.
Thomas held onto the pendant tightly and whispered.
Nova.
Then the pendant glowed and levitate. The light the pendant gave out started flickering like some sort of signal. Then he heard a pop. The pendant stopped glowing and fell into his open palm. He turned around and saw Mark.
What changed you mind?
He asked. Thomas shrugged.
Having to pretend to still have a wolf is getting to me. My future alpha had started getting suspicious. The longer I stay, the faster they find out about my secret. It's hard living as a werewolf who can't do what a werewolf should do.
Mark gave him a sympathetic smile. He walked over and slung his arms around Thomas's shoulder.
I'm not telling you to forget about your life here, but you'll make new memories when you join. You'll fun in our guild. It's a bit chaotic, but they're family.
Thomas smirked.
Not so different with this one then.
Mark laughed.
We'll make our guild the best hunting guild ever in history. Got that right.
Thomas laughed. Mark smiled.
Come on, let's get you back.
With that, they were gone.